We were born too late to explore Earth, yet too early to explore the galaxy. We exist in this awkward moment of human expansion. However depressing this may be, there is still a lot of fascinating human activity in space. Hey Slavic Vikings, and welcome to Geopolitics of Space. I've already covered the geopolitics of every single country on Earth, including Antarctica, so now there is nothing else to do than to look up for the stars and delve into the complex history and current situation of space. Space exploration only really started during the Cold War, with the space race between the USSR and the US. The Soviets had a big lead over the Americans throughout the entire space race. For example, the USSR sent the first animal to space, the famous Laika dog, who infamously died after only a few hours in orbit. One of the big advantages of the Soviets during the Cold War was that it could play much more risky, since with its severe lack of democracy and its authoritarian nature, it could much easier hide unsuccessful missions. Therefore, the first person in space was Yuri Gagarin, who tragically died together with his pilot in 1968. Or did he? The story of Yuri is very interesting and there's a lot of questioning about his death, so let me know if I should make a video on his life in the comments. I got a bit ahead of myself since almost a decade earlier the USSR launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth. It crashed after only 3 months, but it was the first true start of the space race, and more importantly, the first step towards space domination by humans. The US accepted the space race challenge, and just 1 year after the Soviets, NASA was established and the first US satellite was launched. The Cold War was a war of perception, specifically public perception for which economic system was more successful. That was the narrative, at least. So, the space race was a form of a dance competition, with both sides trying to one-up each other using up unique dance moves. By unique dance moves, I mean unique space exploration achievements. And the USSR was destroying the West by being quick with their unique dancing maneuvers. During the space race, there was a clear elephant in the room, or disco ball if I'm gonna continue with this analogy. That being the moon. Just like I mentioned earlier, the space race was all about media attention, and who wouldn't be interested with any achievements involving the mysterious cheese ball in our orbital backyard. And so, the US, desperate to catch up to the Soviets, launched the Pioneer 1 lunar probe. The probe missed the moon, but it became the first spacecraft to enter solar orbit. The communists then decided to show the capitalists how it's done, and launched Luna 1, the first spacecraft to reach the moon. The probe crashed on the lunar surface, but it was a significant achievement for the Soviet space program, humiliating the US once again. After this, the Soviets continued to molest the moon, for example by taking inappropriate pictures of the moon's backside. The US, humiliated once again, couldn't even get close to the brave successes of the USSR. Alexei Leonov of the Soviet Union became the first human to walk in space, or float I guess. He spent 12 minutes outside the Vauxhall 2nd spacecraft, and 2 years later the Soviet Union launched Soyuz 1, its first manned spacecraft. The spacecraft crashed during landing, killing the astronaut on board. The United States, so far behind the race, tried desperately to catch up, but instead in 1967 the Apollo 1 spacecraft caught fire during a ground test, killing all 3 astronauts on board. This tragedy set back the US space program by several months. However, just 1 year later, the US unexpectedly launched the Apollo 8 spacecraft that orbited the moon becoming the first crewed spacecraft to do so. This mission was a major milestone in the US space program, and it demonstrated that humans could travel to the moon and back safely. This year of 1968 was a dramatic culmination of this space race, the beat drop if you will. All the most reasonable possible space achievements have been completed. Mostly by the Soviets of course, but nevertheless. And only one achievement was left. The finish line for this race, that being the moon landing. In the funny year of 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin of the United States became the first humans to walk on the moon. They landed the Apollo 11 spacecraft on the Sea of Tranquility and spent over 2 hours exploring the surface. This event was a major triumph for the US space program and watershed moment in human history. Not only that, despite initially losing the space race, America managed to reach the finishing line of this race. And it really was the finish line, since after this, the Soviets basically gave up on their space ambitions, and they never got even close to the moon since then. The Americans came back to visit the moon a couple of times until the 70s, where it was evident that the US won the space race. In my opinion, this defeat for the Russians led to the slow decline of the USSR and its eventual collapse. I wonder if in an alternative timeline where the Soviets were the first to land on the moon, this win would be enough for the Soviets to prevent the decline of communism around the world. So now we move on to modern times. With the Cold War over, there was no need for the massive investment in NASA, and so began the dark ages for space exploration. NASA's budget was slashed, and the number of space missions launched each year decreased dramatically. According to NASA, the number of space missions launched each year peaked at 1967, at 121. In 1970, that number had fallen to 55. By 1980, it was down to 30. And in the 1990s, it was typically around 20 per year. This slowdown in space exploration had a number of negative consequences. It stifled scientific innovation and discovery. It also made it more difficult for NASA to attract and retain top talent, and it damaged America's reputation as a leader in space exploration. However, in recent years, space exploration has begun to emerge from its dark ages, once again thanks to capitalism, just within a different context. Instead of space exploration being motivated by ideological warfare to prove capitalism's superiority, space expansion is growing now thanks in large part to the rise of private companies, like SpaceX, which have developed new technologies that have made space travel more affordable and accessible. SpaceX, founded in 2002 by Elon Musk, has revolutionized the space launch industry. Don't get me wrong, I am no fan of Elon Musk, but it's hard to deny SpaceX's achievements. The company has developed reusable rockets which have significantly reduced the cost of launching payloads into space. SpaceX has also developed a number of other innovative technologies, such as its Dragon spacecraft, which can carry cargo and astronauts to and from the International Space Station. I will talk more on the International Space Station later. Apparently, space has become the playground for billionaires, since Jeff Bezos, with his Blue Origin company, is also trying to make it on the cosmic dance floor. However, as far as I'm concerned, all he has achieved was building a penis-shaped rocket. So instead, let's talk more about SpaceX. Elon Musk is known for not keeping his promises, and his SpaceX project is no exception. For example, the company promised to launch its Starship spacecraft in 2021, but it has not yet done so. SpaceX also promised to send humans to Mars in 2024. By the time of recording this, he has 1 month, so let me know in the comments if he has succeeded. Elon Musk has said that he wants to make Mars a habitable planet for humans, and he has outlined a number of ways to do this. One of SpaceX's goals is to terraform Mars. This would involve warming the planet's atmosphere and thickening it with nitrogen and oxygen. SpaceX could do this by melting the Martian ice caps and releasing methane to the atmosphere. Methane is a greenhouse gas that would trap heat and warm the planet. Another goal of SpaceX is to create a self-sustaining colony on Mars. This would involve building habitats, growing food, and generating energy. SpaceX is developing a number of technologies to make this possible, such as its Starship spacecraft and its Starlink satellite internet constellation. Elon Musk has also said that he wants to save Mars from becoming a second Earth. He was warned that if we are not careful, we could pollute Mars and make it uninhabitable. Musk has said that SpaceX will take steps to prevent this, such as by developing reusable rockets and using clean energy sources on Mars. I think it is possible for the first Martian colony to happen in our lifetime, but if shit hits the fan down here on Earth, you already know that no dirty peasants like you or me are boarding that ship. Like I talked about in my video on nuclear bombs, we are witnessing the beginning of a new Cold War. With a new upcoming dancer on the dance floor, China. China's space program has made remarkable progress in recent years. In 2003, China became the 3rd country to successfully send astronauts to space. In 2011, China launched its first space station, Tiangong-1. In 2019, China landed a spacecraft on the dark side of the moon, the first country to do so. By the way, the dark side is not actually dark. It gets just as much sunshine as the other side. We just think it's dark because we can't see it. The United States might have a longer history of space exploration than China, but China is catching up quickly. In 2011, the United States retired its space shuttle program, and it has been relying on Russia to launch astronauts to the International Space Station. You might have noticed an immediate problem with this statement, since Russia and the US are less than cordial nowadays. However, the good news is that the US is no longer dependent on Roscosmos for transportation in the ISS. Instead, SpaceX has been transporting NASA astronauts to the space station since 2020. I believe that the future of space exploration is bright. With the rise of private companies and the renewed interest and investment of governments around the world, we are on the cusp of a new era of space exploration. We might be too old to explore the world's landmass, but we are the first pioneers of space. In 2007, China tested an anti-satellite missile by destroying one of its own satellites. This test created a large amount of space debris, which is now a major problem for all countries involved in space exploration. This action also broke the non-verbal agreement to keep weapons out of space. Space debris is any man-made object in orbit that no longer serves a useful purpose. This includes old satellites, rocket parts, and fragments from collisions between space objects. Space debris can travel up to speeds of 28,000 kilometers per hour, and even a small piece of debris can damage or destroy a satellite or spacecraft. The problem of space debris is getting worse all the time. We are currently over 100,000 pieces of space debris that are large enough to be tracked by ground-based radar. However, there are millions of smaller pieces of debris that are too small to be tracked. Space debris, is a threat to all countries involved in space exploration. It can damage or destroy satellites, spacecraft, and even the International Space Station. Space debris can also cause communication outages or disrupt GPS navigation. There are a number of things that can be done to reduce the problem of space debris. One is to design satellites and spacecraft to be more durable and less likely to create debris, but there are better ways to solve this. The best way to reduce the problem of space debris is to stop creating it in the first place. This means avoiding anti-satellite missile tests and taking steps towards reducing the amount of debris created during launches and satellite operations. The theory of exponential destruction of space debris is a hypothesis that states the amount of space debris could increase exponentially over time, leading to a cascade of collisions that would make space exploration impossible. The theory is based on the idea that each collision between space objects creates more debris, which then increases the likelihood of further collisions. This can lead to a chain of reaction, in which the amount of debris increases exponentially. The theory is supported by mathematical models, which show that exponential growth of space debris is possible under certain conditions. For example, if the number of satellites in orbit continues to increase at its current rate, and if there are no measures taken to reduce the amount of debris, then it is possible that the amount of debris could reach a critical point where exponential growth begins. If we don't solve this problem, the orbit might become so clogged up that it will become impossible for any out-of-Earth activities. Worst case scenario, we have to wait a couple of decades for the trash to fall back on Earth. The European Union has its own space agency, the European Space Agency, or ESA. It is involved in a number of space projects, including the International Space Station, the Galileo satellite navigation system, and the Ariane rocket program. However, in short, it concerns itself with less flashy projects and is primarily focused with science. I have to stop the video here, because I'm traumatized from this series and I'm tired of editing long-ass videos. However, I still have a lot to cover, such as the robots on different planets, the threat of asteroids, possible mining operations on asteroids, the future of space geopolitics, and the interesting conundrum of the International Space Station in recent years. As well as much more. So if this video gets 200 likes, I'll make a part 2 for Geopolitics of Space. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and as always, farewell, żegnam, and goodbye.